Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning, everybody. Please give us 5 minutes. We'll start very soon. Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to our final event of our 2026 Internal Audit Month. During this month, KPMG West Africa, that's Ghana and Nigeria, alongside IIA and all other global internal auditors around the world, joined their efforts, their time together to create awareness on internal audit as a profession and how it has evolved over the years to create awareness about the value we bring to organizations. During this month, we try to empower teams and elevate performance. And we did that through sharing insights of the value of internal audits and how collaboration within various risk stakeholders have come together to be able to ensure that risk is not just something that is overlooked, but over the years we have tried to be proactive, and this is a way that the profession has evolved over the years to come together to collaborate with other people to create awareness of the profession and how it affects the value of firms globally. So today we are very privileged to have a number of speakers who have a number of years within this profession to come and share some insights on the theme findings to impact using audit results for continuous improvement. So we are just going to go right away into today's program. So we are very lucky to have we are very lucky to have the partner or the head of advisories. Sorry, we are very lucky to have the head and partner of IC and JRCS, Tolu. He has over 22 years of experience in delivering value across various industries and sectors of the economy, providing business advisory service, covering internal audits and internal controls, compliance advisory, optimization and transformation of internal audit functions, and enterprise risk management. Tolu is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and a certified risk management assurance. He's a member of the Institute of Internal Audits and a former chairman of the board of Institute of Internal Auditors, and currently serves as a board member for both IIA Nigeria and the African Federation of Institutes of Internal Audits. Tolu completed the Advanced Management Program at Lagos Business School, and he has KPMG International Accreditation for Enterprise Risk Management and Operational Risk Management. Please, with virtual claps, if you can also clap in your home, please welcome Tolu, the head and partner of IC and GRCS, to give us their opening remarks and the welcome address. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Particularly happy to see your faces again, having been with us since beginning of this month. This is the fourth of the session that we're having in this month, and I hope and believe that you have found the sessions very interactive, instructive, and valuable. Today, we will be looking at other topics, which is around the driving efficiency and collaboration in audit delivery. The essence of this is basically that for any internal auditor, the reason why you do the work, why you go through all the stress is basically to be able to deliver a valuable, impactful findings that would lead to results that would encourage or move the company from where it is to helping them to achieve the objective. It's extremely important that we are able to do this, and the reason is because, as a number of us know, the perception of internal audits is, in a number of places, is seen more as, oh, the person that comes after an incident has happened to then start pointing fingers and looking for who to blame. So rather than continue this, the leading internal auditor is actually the one that is able to prevent that issue from happening, such that you are positioned the organization to quickly identify the risk and the challenges that could affect the achievement of the objective. So in doing this, it means that there is a need to have a methodology, not only to follow a very clear methodology in executing the work, but that the result of the work needs to be prepared in a way that is clear and it is achievable and implementable. So what we hope to gather today is to listen to our speakers to help us to analyze these key areas and identify what we need to focus on to ensure that our objectives are being met and we are really seen as a value-adding internal audit function for us, for our organizations. So to do this, we've put together some very eloquent speakers to come and share their experience and our views about the topic with us. I'm sure that we all benefit immensely from their views. I am also sure that as part of this, it will also cover the implication of AI and how we can utilize AI to enhance our delivery and services that we are providing to our organizations. So without much ado, I'm glad to welcome all of us to this session, and I'm sure that we will find it very valuable and value-adding. Thank you very much and have a very good session. Over to you, Mame.
Thank you so much, Tolu. So we are just going to go ahead and go to our first session. So we're going to be talking about the value of internal audits from findings to impacts. And to lead us, or the speaker for this session, is going to be the person of Priscilla Priasa. She's a manager with the Governance, Risk and Compliance Services at KPMG Ghana, with over 9 years of professional experience spanning from external audits, internal audits, risk management, and advisory services. She has more than 4 years of experience in external audits and 5 years in advisory services across a wide range of industries. Throughout her career, Priscilla has been part of teams responsible for reviewing financial statements, evaluating internal control systems, and assessing risk management processes for various organizations. She has also led and served on multiple engagements involving internal audits, internal controls, and enterprise risk management. She's also a chartered accountant and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. So please help me welcome Priscilla Piazza, who will be speaking on findings to impact. Priscilla, please, if you can hear me, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Araba. Please, am I audible? Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay. I'm not seeing any thumbs up. Can everybody hear me? Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So good morning, everybody. And I'm very happy to be speaking for this important topic. I mean, it's something that value is one of the hallmarks of any internal auditor. How are you bringing value to your business? That is one important topic. So I'm very excited to be talking about it. Now, what I'm going to be discussing is framing the journey from findings to value. So when you carry out an internal audit exercise and you get findings, how do you translate those findings into value? So the first thing is internal audit is not just a compliance function. We are strategic partners. Internal auditors are strategic partners. If you look at the global internal audit standards under domain 1, when we talk about the purpose of internal auditing, it talks about the fact that we exist to create value, to protect the value that we've created, and also to sustain the value. So what it means is that we are not just police officers, but we are here as strategic business partners to give value to any organization where we want to drive real improvement. Now, what happens in a lot of organizations is the fact that we have the audit reports, we read them, we acknowledge them, okay, yes, these are the gaps that we identified, and then we forget about them. Now, this conversation is to move past just finding, acknowledging, and then forgetting. How are we translating what we found to help the business evolve? Now, for a lot of organizations as well, you realize that the audit findings become a tick box. How are we making sure that when we get the issues, we're able to create an accountability framework where recommendations can be owned by people and can be actioned? Now, if we have findings and we do not do anything about them, what it becomes is a missed opportunity for performance improvement. And what happens is that you have these same issues repeating themselves or creeping up as we go along. One thing I would want to try and do in this conversation is to reframe or rephrase or change our perspective when it comes to audit findings and what kind of faults they are. We need to really shift our mindsets from what went wrong or pointing blame to how we can really improve. Because again, this is about process improvement. This is about performance improvement. So it's not about who is doing what is wrong, but how can we improve our current processes, right? Now, let's say we have an audit exercise, or we've done as internal auditors, we've done our risk assessment, we've been able to identify what processes we want to focus on, and now we have findings. How are we even documenting the findings that we have? How are we making sure that the findings that we have are clear? Because at the end of the day, if management doesn't understand what has been written, how are they even going to action it? So the clarity in terms of not even using technical jargons, but making it very practical and understandable so that people or process owners can understand what you are saying is very, very necessary. So clarity is very important. And how relevant is it? Yes, you found an issue. How does it impact the business? Is it something that is just a housekeeping issue, or is it something that really drives performance when it comes to the business? So the relevance of what you found is very important. Now, one thing that is also very important in this conversation is risk. You can get an audit finding, but really the question is about the risk. What are the key risk drivers driving this finding that you have? In my experience across multiple engagements, one of the things that we discuss as team members is when you find a risk, the key question is, when you find the finding or when you find the audit finding, the key question is, what is the risk? Because the risk is what will even drive management to pay close attention to what you're saying. So the risk is very key. When you have a finding, your focus should be on the clarity, about the relevance, and about the risk, because that is what will cause management to push towards closing the gap. If the risk has to do with efficiency, then you see that it's clear that it's something that has to be done to make the business evolve. So risk is very vital when you are putting the finding together. Now, one of the things we tend to do, even in trying to get management to own an audit finding, is the technicality of what you write. If you are putting together too many technical jargons in your language and in your documentation, it doesn't feel like a response that management should own. It rather feels like an audit issue. So let's try and shy away from using too many technical jargons in our writing, such that people can relate to the findings that we have. Okay, now another thing that is important in writing out your finding is about ownership and accountability. You want to make sure that you are tying the finding to a particular function or a particular person as a champion, to make sure that they know that this is an issue that I have to champion, this is an issue that I have to own, and this is an issue that I have accountability for, right? So the ownership and accountability, and even directing who the finding should go to, is very important. Now, another thing that you should also be mindful about when it comes to documenting your finding is about the recommendation. It shouldn't be a high-level recommendation such that there are no clear actions as to who should do what, because it happens a lot where you have a recommendation that is fine. We have a code of conduct, we've reviewed it, we've realized that there are certain issues in the code of conduct. It doesn't meet the industry standard or benchmark. What are the recommendations in closing that gap? Are we highlighting the specific areas in the code of conduct document that should be there? Or are we just saying that it doesn't meet the standard and leave it at that? So making sure that the recommendation is actionable, such that if I pick it and I look at it, I know the specific things I need to do to close the gap, is very important when we are documenting our finding. Now, another thing again, that is also important when you are documenting your finding is about how it's being implemented and what we are doing to make sure that we are following through with the implementation. Now, for a lot of us in internal audits, one of the things we try to push is management accountability. So in our management meetings, maybe monthly or bi-monthly, how are we ensuring that those are action points that we are putting in on our agenda to see how we are closing out on gaps? So following through is making sure that whoever is owning the process, whoever is championing it, has communicated to us what timelines they are attaching to the gaps that we are closing, right? And if there are any delays, how are they even making sure they communicate such delays so that we know or have an expectation as to when these findings are going to be closed out. So that is very important, about regular tracking, regular progress reviews, to make sure that yes, we've identified the issue. Yes, we know who is owning the issue, but how well are we doing? What is the status of it, and how well are we closing it out? Because in my experience, you realize that some of the findings are, the audit team have taken valuable time to review the findings or review the issues, bring out the findings, and you realize that the implementation is partial. Not everything has been closed, or sometimes not even closed at all. What it means is that we've taken time off to do this exercise, and now it has become a waste. It has been a missed opportunity for performance improvement. So we don't want to just do the work. We want to make sure that the work brings results. So the following through is very vital. Now, what we should try to also avoid in even following through is just saying, yes, we've closed it out. But when you go and look at on the ground, or when the reality, you look at what is real on the ground, you realize that there are still issues there. So we don't want to just show it on paper, but we want to make sure that the close out, or even the controls that we are putting in place to mitigate the risk that we've identified, have really been implemented in reality, and it's not just the paper. It's not just on paper. Now, one thing that I find very valuable after all of these actions is how we are measuring the impact. Okay, at the end of the day, it's not just about closing the gap, but it's also about how impactful it is to the business, because that is the value we are talking about at the end of the day. What tangible things are we seeing to help the business to grow? So if we as internal auditors have brought out findings, or we've identified findings, how are we making sure that the findings translate into impacts? So it's not just about closing out the issue, but how it has impacted the business. So what has changed essentially is what we are saying when we talk about impact. What losses have we realized has been reduced? Or how have we improved efficiency? How have we strengthened controls? How have we seen it translate into the numbers in terms of revenue being improved or costs being lessened? Okay, so how are all these issues that we are talking about impacting the performance of the business? Very important. So we need to measure the impact of our audit findings in terms of the growth of the business. Now, one thing that is also probably not mentioned as much when we talk about value is about the continuous improvement loop. So yes, we've identified the issue, we've remedied the gaps, but how are we making sure that it becomes now a cultural shift, not just about closing the gaps, but how it's being embedded in our everyday life? For most organizations, one of the things that we try to push as internal auditors is the fact that when we identify issues or gaps, we document them. If there's a part of the process or policies that has not been updated to reflect those issues, we want to make sure that we put them in writing so that process owners or control owners can use that as their everyday guide in their implementation. So documenting these processes are very important. Now, I spoke about the culture. How do we really embed the culture and make sure it becomes part of us? Regular trainings. Okay, how are we making sure that even in our training model or agenda, we incorporate some of these things for people to understand that that is the way of life of the organization. This is something that we expect you to do on a day-to-day basis. Training is very important if you want that to happen. And also, even in speaking about the internal audit function not being the police, but a strategic partner, we talk about the culture of learning and not blaming anybody. We are not here to police anybody. We are not here to point fingers. We are here for process improvement. So in the trainings, we want to also make sure that we are embedding the culture of not blaming. We are embedding the culture of seeing the internal audit function as a strategic partner. Now, one last thing I'd want to talk about before I move on to the next speaker is the fact that even in our West Africa jurisdiction, things are changing. We've spoken about AI. We are looking at how our regulators are even trying to strengthen or tighten regulations. And we are seeing the fact that there's an economic downturn globally, so resources are still limited. How are we ensuring that in the face of all of these adversities, we are making sure that our audit findings bring value? How are we incorporating AI in value creation? Now, when we talk about AI, one of the things that we want to use AI for is making sure that our audit findings are not reactive. We are not responding to issues after they occur, but we are being proactive to make sure that we put certain measures in place to make sure that even the risks don't materialize at all. It's not a response. Okay, so that's why AI is very vital. Now, before I leave, one of the practical things, or maybe in a nutshell, if I want to summarize everything that I've said, one of the few pointers I want to leave you with is the fact that you want to turn every finding into an action plan. We don't want to just leave it at just an audit finding, but I want to make sure that we have practical actions we can follow through to make sure that the finding turns into a value. Another thing is making sure that we assign clear ownership and deadlines. So yes, if the head of IT is championing a particular issue, it's not just about they owning it, but they're telling us how they are going to close it out and when they are going to close it out and escalating delays as necessary. And we also want to track the progress consistently, make sure that we are always checking to see how well we are doing in terms of our implementation. And then also measuring the impact in terms of how it impacts the business. Okay. And then again, the last but not least, fostering a culture of continuous improvement. So making sure that it becomes part of our everyday life. So thank you very much, Araba, for giving me this platform. And thank you, team, for listening. All right.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. Yes, I think one thing that I took out from your presentation was that when it comes to findings, we have to make sure that our findings are very clear. What is actually the risk that is involved within the finding, and how we can also assign those findings to people who would champion it, so that we have direct accountability to make sure that these findings are implemented. And it makes me wonder why some recommendations go unimplemented. Bringing us to our next session, we have an assistant manager of the internal audit, governance, risk and compliance services in Nigeria. She has over 6 years of experience, and she has worked extensively in delivering data and analytics-enabled internal audits, risk monitoring solutions to clients across global spaces, including the financial service sector, consumer markets, industry markets, telecommunication, and the energy sector. Oluwa currently possesses strong expertise in applications of data analytics and intelligence tools for process and control assessments. She's also a Microsoft certified Power BI data analytics associate. Oluwa Koride, if you can't hear me, please take over the session. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me now. Hi, Arba, can you hear me?
Hello, yeah, Koride, please, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Priscilla, Tolu as well for the introduction to this session. I've been introduced. My name is Oluwakorede Udekomaya. I'd like to believe that most of us on the call are either practicing internal audit professionals, transitioning into the profession, or have interacted with internal audit at some point. So I'd just like to ask us a few questions. How many of our audit findings are fully implemented on time? Internally within your company, or as a consultant, you have gone through internal audit cycles, and then you've given recommendations, and then you come back the next year, and then you realize that, a lot of these recommendations have not been implemented. If you have experienced such, I would like you kindly raise your hand, just to show that we're following. How many of us actually track implementation, or do we just report our implementation status? It's very important, as Priscilla had mentioned, it's very easy to actually document recommendations in the previous year and then come again, and then you see that on the surface they have allegedly, implemented these recommendations. But if you look deeper, you realize that, it's just a fluke, and then they haven't done any actual work on it. And lastly, what percentage of your recommendations actually reduce risk? As I, I've been referring a lot to Priscilla, but from what she mentioned, right? How many of our findings are actually very concrete? How many of our findings are not just, process improvements, and actually are tied to one major risk or the other? So, I'll assume a couple of us have experienced one or more of these things. personally, and some of the recent jobs I worked on, especially some that annuity clients, you work first year, second year, and then third year. And I begin to notice some patterns. There's just certain recommendations that still haven't been resolved. And maybe year on year, there's like a partial remediation. They've done something, but then, it's still not the full recommendation that has been taken in. Personally, something I've done recently was to make sure that, such gaps that haven't been fully remediated are now, brought up again, either as fresh issues to the management viewing, or even just put in the executive summary, and then just to show that, okay, these particular issues from as far back as 2023 have still not been remediated. And then another thing that's also very important, by the time you begin to run analytics on some of these issues that haven't been remediated year on year, and then you begin to see there's a trend around it, and it's a bit concerning, but once you're able to present such information to the management or the the board, it makes it more of a priority for them to close out, generally. So moving on to that, right, as once again, Priscilla mentioned, provide detailed recommendations during our audit cycles, but then we noticed that these implementation rates are consistently low. What could be some of the reasons why our implementations are not being taken in? First of all, as you mentioned, overly complex recommendations, there are two ways it could go, right? You give recommendations that there's a whole lot of bogus language, one, or two, you're giving recommendations that are a bit too advanced for a certain company. So companies that are smaller in size or they're not as advanced, and then you're giving them very, very, advanced recommendations. It might not work, it's very easy to find similar issues across different kind of companies or even companies in different sectors. See, for example, you see an issue in the banking sector and maybe insurance sector. Banking sector generally, well, in Nigeria is way more advanced than many other sectors. So there's certain recommendations you can give in the banking sector, especially with respect to like technology, that is easy for them to implement because there's already support from the board or even finances. However, smaller companies, you wouldn't be able to give such recommendations, Also, poor prioritization by management. As we all know, IA is, maybe seen as police unit, or some of the time they don't see the value in what we are providing, right? So sometimes management, and this could even be aside the auditing management, also generally management, tone at the top, sometimes they are not prioritizing these issues well enough, maybe because issues haven't crystallized yet, so they don't see how important that is. We also have resource constraints, right? So if the auditing units, they don't have as many staff to close out these issues, or even financially, there's no budget to close out these recommendations. That's another reason why our recommendations are long-standing. Lack of ownership, very important. If you've written exams such as maybe CIA, CISA, you see that modules are very, very, there are certain modules that are very important, that are very big on ownership, right? At the end of the day, you have to make sure that certain processes have been assigned to people. You have to make sure that, everyone knows what they're in charge of, because that's one of the easiest ways to have, risk crystallized, because nobody's in charge of them. So also, if the general perception of audit across the company or firm is that the audit is just policing them rather than partnering with them to bring out value, they might not really take what we have given them as recommendations to heart. They might just say, okay, it's a tick in the box exercise. You're giving us this recommendation. If you come again next year and it's still there, well, it's your business. But these are the things that make up a quiet failure of internal audits. We have gone there, done the reviews, we have given our recommendations, in your head, you think you've done such a great job with your level of review, you've gone in deep, you've brought out issues no one has before. But then it comes to recommendations, you have documented seemingly good recommendations, but these recommendations are not being, they're not being taken in, they're not being considered by management. So these are some of the reasons why our recommendations are not, either they're partially implemented or they're not even implemented at all. And so what's the value of a great internal audit report if no one acts on it? As Priscilla mentioned, we put in valuable time, but if there's no action on it, it's almost as though no work has been done, and it's just, okay, we're fulfilling the audit plan for the year, which is not so good. So moving on, we're just talking about the cost of unimplemented recommendations, which is, some of the crux of my discussion today. As I mentioned before, when implementations are not taken in, especially ones that are risk-based, like they have risk backing, it's very easy for risk, even risk that we're predicting, not even the ones that have crystallized, to crystallize even fast. So some of the many ways that are unimplemented recommendations can bring to light are, there can be examples like financial loss, reputational risk, audit function devaluation, and lastly, there's also the continuous improvement part of it, as Priscilla had also mentioned. So I'd just like to throw a question to anyone, if you could drop in the comments. Unfortunately, I can't see the comments now, but as a professional so far, has there been any situation where you preferred a recommendation, maybe 2024, you came back again in 2025, because that implementation was not taken in yet, there was now a different issue that came about from that. So I don't know if anyone has any, if you can drop in the comments, you can raise your hand or just, thumbs up, just to see that all of us are having like similar thoughts around this. Okay, thank you very much. So I don't know if anyone else has, or if anyone else wants to share their examples. Hi, Arba, is there any comments, or can we move on?
Hello, Corey. Please, you can move on.
Okay, thank you. Tolu raised his hand. I don't know if he wants to add something or if he was just corroborating the fact.
Yeah, I wanted to add a comment to what you said. Share one of the examples. So we had a situation where we did a review. From the review, we noted that there are gaps in their processes and that the gaps needs to be highlighted. And we actually even mentioned a particular officer that doesn't seem to be complying with the normal segregation of duties that you would expect. So we submitted the report and left. About 6 months later, there was a fraud, which they discovered via whistleblowing. Then they got forensic investigators to do the review, and it was coming from the process that we have raised. So, and the forensic investigator actually noted that the internal auditors actually raised this issue as a gap. And I think what it tells us is it also shows why it's important for us to be focusing on process review and gaps as we are doing our review, because that way we are able to talk to the root cause of the issues rather than just raising compliance issues of non-compliance. So it was unfortunate that the fraud happened, but it was also gratifying to know that at least internal audit raised it. So that way we gain more respect from the clients than if we had not raised it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Thank you. That's generally, that has one of the examples I had as well. But yeah, it's always nice to see real life examples of, some of these things. Very easy, financial leakage, also we think about it from maybe the IT security bit of it. You noted that, there were some weak controls and then weak password controls, right? And then unfortunately, nothing was done about it. Some months down the line, there's a breach, there's a whole event around that. It's very easy for things to, escalate, even though from the surface, it might not look very harmful. From our point of view as, internal audit, internal control professionals, that, okay, there's problem waiting to explode, but some of the times you just think, oh, it's just one of those things that they've put in the report, it won't affect us much. But going forward, I think it's very important now that, that we explain to our customers or our clients why it's important to take in these implementations or these recommendations. And another thing we can even do is, when you are discussing with them the roadmap at the end of the audit, is just to make sure that everyone's aligned on it. They understand where the issues are coming from, they understand why we need to close out these issues. Very important. As you said, you understand the reason, you know the risk, but then it's very important to also communicate, provide value from that point of view to the clients, that this is the reason why I mean, in a whole lot of audit reports as well, some people, there's the risk, there's the maybe control, there's the finding, there's the implication. We need to really hammer in on the implication and say, this is why this needs to be closed out as soon as possible. And they're always fortunate when these controls are still, preventive rather than detective, or even if it's if it has detected, how soon can these controls be corrected as well. So I'd just like to say, an audit recommendation that's not implemented is a risk that's not reduced. The fact that you have, preferred a recommendation to a gap, and then this recommendation has not been taken in, a risk has not been reduced just yet until there's an implementation, 100% closed out. So we need to also understand that our success should not be measured by the number of findings generally. I mean, that's one point of view, number of findings, but it's also how much value and, how much percentage of the risk that we've, noted are actually being mitigated. So I'll just leave us with some closing words that says, internal audit doesn't create value by what it finds, internal audit creates value by what gets fixed or what is prevented from the issues that we have noted. So thank you very much, everyone, for the time. I'll just give the floor back to Araba now.
All right, thank you so much, Corrective. So internal auditors, we do not find value by what we find, but what gets fixed. And this brings us to the next presentation for the day. Who exactly owns this fix? And we are lucky to have Omar, an experienced senior associate from Nigeria, KPMG, with the Internal Audit, Governance, Risk and Compliance Service, who has half a decade of experience with internal audits. He possesses extensive expertise in delivering internal audits over financial reporting, internal audits, governance advisory services. His portfolio spans across leading organizations from telecommunications, energy, and financial sector. Omar, please, if you can hear me, can you take over this presentation? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can anybody hear me? Just to be sure, if you can give a thumbs up, or
Omar,
if you can hear me.
please, we can hear you.
Okay.
Right.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you once again for joining this session. And the previous speaker has spoken about the idea of having to the risk that would occur from implementing recommendations that have to do with internal audit. But this is now the question now that from my own side I'm trying to communicate is, who are the people that are supposed to fix these issues? I mean, first of all, we should identify ourselves as not just those what we do is that we identify the problem. Then management is supposed to be the one to fix the problem. A major reason why internal audits is unresolved is the misunderstanding or the miscommunication of ownership. I mean, internal auditors would own the idea of having to review or having to discover. In some cases, look at observations, but it's not their business or it's not their responsibility to actually implement this recommendations. And why does ownership matters? Ownership matters in the sense that why some impacts that would occur if ownership does not matter will be related to situations whereby actions are being delayed to resolve such issues. You have situations whereby findings are being repeated, and in some cases, risk would become unresolved, that it would even increase or increase to more than what it was before, and also accountability becomes unclear. So, why is now moving on to the major discussion, which is related to who owns the fix? Management, like I said before, owns the fix. In this case, management can be the board, it could be the senior management, it could be a process owner, it could be the head of the department, it could even be as far as even the low-level staffs of the department, because everybody has their own role to play. So one major thing where management should do, or in most cases, the best thing to do is to develop action plans, allocate resources to ensure that these recommendations have been implemented, implement corrective actions, and also maintain sustainability and also maintain continuous improvement or continuous implementation of these recommendations. So, I mean, like I'd mentioned before, internal audit business is majorly to follow up. I mean, looking at it is just to identify risk, recommend improvements, follow up on implementations, as to what's not. I mean, we have no business with having to you have no business having to be the one to implement. I mean, you go to some organizations, I mean, from my own experience, you go to some organizations, they believe that because the internal audit unit is the one that discovered a finding, they're supposed to be the one to drive that implementation. Whereas it's not our business. It's not something you're supposed to do. And I mean, I think this also has to do with the sense of accountability. These departments are supposed to be accountable, whichever the observations or findings have to do with how the one's supposed to be the ones to implement these recommendations. But you have situations whereby you go to certain companies, they would tell you that, oh, the internal audit did not drive this, did not drive that, which in most cases, not even in most cases, in all cases, it's not the business of the internal audit or the internal audit unit. So moving on, you have major parties that are supposed to be the ones to drive this implementation. Like I said, management. I mean, our management starts from the top. I mean, from the board and the board through the board of the committee, whereby they're supposed to challenge management on delays of implementations, of recommendations, escalate or discuss or resolve issues, ensure accountability from ground to top of any organization as to which it applies to. And another thing, again, you look at again is even the employees of that particular organization. In some cases, you have employees and you tell them to maybe, for example, you're giving them a particular role, or maybe different. You go to companies and you meet certain departments and they would have certain issues that are recurring constantly and they don't own up to that thing. I think from my own experience, I had an experience once where I went to a company, I think it was related to a policy issue. In this case, there was a department that was in charge of implementing or documenting policies, and you had a department that was also in charge of the process itself. And in this case, they will be the ones, they will be pushing it from one person to the another, saying that, oh, this issue is not for me, this observation is not for me, this observation is not for me. So you have it in sense that the process owners or the people that are in charge of the employees are in such departments that these issues applied to are supposed to be the ones to attend to these issues. So moving on, you would have certain things that would occur from management not having to implement issues or maybe having to own up to these issues, which I would call common failures that would occur from lack of ownership from parties that are supposed to attend. I mean, in most cases, the reason why these failures would occur is because, like I mentioned before, the audits, they would think that the audit unit is supposed to be the one to handle these recommendations or these implementations. You also have cases where lack of accountability, in which the best thing to do is to, or the advisable thing to do is to maybe find some certain parties, allocate resources, or maybe certain staffs to attend to those observations or those areas as to which observations would arise from. So you would, I mean, talk to them, have a proper structure where you would allocate these areas to them. You would also give like a timeline, more or less to maybe give them an explanation of what to do or something like that, just put them through. And you'll ensure that, oh, these things, you as maybe, for example, in the head of department, you are doing the structuring. As you are supposed to be the one to follow up consistently or constantly. Oh, is this thing being done? Is this thing being done? You probably in some situations would have meetings to constantly confirm if these things are being done, yes or no. Then also in some cases, you'd have situations whereby there's poor escalation in the sense that maybe, for example, a department would, a particular observation has been noted to a particular department and they will look at it and so I feel like we don't have enough resources or we don't have the right amenities to attend to this particular observation. What they do in most cases is that they just ignore because it doesn't really, I mean, like I cannot resolve the issue. So how do I resolve it? Let me just leave it alone. Let it just keep occurring. I think by the time it keeps occurring, management will get some sort of sense that, oh, issues happening. Whereas you could have just easily just escalated. I mean, we have different channels or different ways as to which we can communicate. I know we do periodic reports to the board and things like that, which you can always communicate to the board as to how you can resolve these issues. So thinking of recommendations as to how to ensure that this, having not to say, okay, you don't know who's supposed to fix this problem. would not occur. First thing you can do is to have a proper structure, which I had mentioned before, in which you would assign people. When you assign people to it, you would draw like a timeline. You would more or less like, oh, for each observation being attended to, you are the one monitoring it, you are the one ensuring that it is adequate, it is fine, it is okay. And another thing you can do is to also even attach that particular responsibility to their evaluations, in which you can come up with KPIs that would relate to that particular area to which they are monitoring. And that thing again is to ensure that, okay, you would maybe in some cases would have show better access or to managements that can easily attend to it. So in terms of escalation, you want to escalate, it will be easy for you to escalate to the right parties, because sometimes you might see it that, okay, you've communicated it to your head of department, you had noted even it before, prior to even when the internal auditors came to come and do their reviews. You can also do that, you can do that maybe via certain channels. You can also communicate that directly to maybe senior management that would actually drive that impact or drive the implementation of the recommendations. Another thing again is to look at the root cause. I mean, focus on the root cause of where the problem is coming from. I mean, you have situations whereby you would say you have reconciliation issues, for example. And one thing you can do is maybe the control that they have, or the control that you usually would have, is to say that, okay, whenever they do reconciliation, they will sign off for whatever it is. You can more or less just to even avoid that particular situation in the first place by just maybe implementing something maybe like an automated send type of reconciliation, whereby it would, instead of that problem having to constantly happen, that automated recommendation has properly does resolved that issue. So looking at it, I mean, in general sense, I mean, I know my co-facilitators had also mentioned accountability. Accountability of implementation of recommendations is a major factor across implementation of recommendations for internal audit, because without having to do these things will continue to occur. Fraud, like I think Tolu had mentioned, any other risk would continue to occur. And in some cases, people will discover, in some cases, this is might occur without even discovery. So I would just basically just have to say that, I mean, leave with a closing remark to say that internal audit identifies risk. Management owns the control. I mean, the board as a whole owns that oversight, and accountability for more parties we would want to turn an internal audit finding to improvements within an organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, Uma.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. And I just want to remind us that we can use the chat box if you have any recommendations or any additions to what the speakers have already said. You can put that in the chat box as well. And you can also ask questions as well. But thank you so much, Uma.
Thank you very much, Uma.
All right. So moving on to the last section of today's event. Also, so we've come to the end, or we are coming to the end. So we are going to have Elizabeth Kwatente. She's going to be speaking on empowering teams, elevating performance, basically taking us through all that we have done or we've tried to raise awareness about during this internal audit month. Elizabeth Kwatente is an associate director with the Governance, Risk and Compliance Services at KPMG Ghana, with over 15 years of experience supporting organizations across the financial service sector, manufacturing, mining, automotive, and public administration sectors. Elizabeth has competencies in evaluating IT risks, controls, and assessing internal audits and internal controls. Elizabeth Kwatente is a certified internal auditor and has a certification in risk management assurance. She's also a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, and also she's a Lean Six Sigma Grey Belt professional. Elizabeth also holds a BSc in administration accounting from the University of Ghana, and also has an MBA from the University of Don Bosco in India. Please, Elizabeth, if you can hear me, you can take over the session.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, our distinguished guests and KPMGians. in Ghana and Nigeria as well. And I believe there are other people who are also joining us from other countries. It's a warm welcome to all of you. And the end of the matter is always better than the beginning. We've been through a series of activities in this month of May 2026, which is globally recognized as the Internal Audit Month. I know the name has gone through a lot of phases or a lot of changes. It used to be International Internal Audit Awareness Month, and then Internal Audit Awareness Month, then Internal Audit Month. So whatever you want to choose to call it, it is our month where we showcase what the profession is all about and also showcase the value we've added to individual organizations. So KPMG, we had to take the entire month to celebrate together with others as well. And I would walk you through what you've been able to achieve within this month of May. This is just the beginning. We may be ending the month celebration, but the value of internal auditing would continue to go beyond this month. So with this month of 2026, we chose a theme where we are empowering teams, elevating performance, the value of internal auditing. And that aligns with IA Global's theme for this month of 2026. We are focusing on the people because internal auditing basically is on the laps or the shoulders of the people that actually perform the work, as well as our process owners that we continue to engage with from time to time. So on the first webinar, the theme was on awareness and foundation of internal auditing, because we knew we were going to build a 4-story building within the month of May. We needed to set out a very stronger foundation. And the objective was to highlight the value of internal auditing. We walked through the evolution of the internal auditing, the journey from the medieval stages up until now, and even where we are going as a profession. You've moved beyond the policing function to be a trusted advisor and to be a strategic partner. We also walked through how we can empower our teams and then elevate performance. And here the conversation even went beyond the confines of internal auditing. So if you're able to join that webinar, there are some key points you could have picked to also build up your team to elevate performance. With that said, for those of us on the call, we've had 4 webinars now. Well, this is the 4th one. And I would want you to drop a number in the chat area to signify the number of webinars you're able to join us within the month. 1 for one of the webinars, 2 out of 4, 3 will be out of the 4. And if you also put in 4, it means that you're able to join us for the entire 4 months, 4 webinars. So drop your number in the chat area. Thank you. And then we also had to look at reimagining internal auditing from assurance to strategic value creation, which is very important. Understanding the value and then the life cycle of internal auditing. This is to serve as a refresher for practicing internal auditors, as well as people who are new to the profession. We also created awareness of the applicable standard guiding the internal auditing profession. It is a profession and we have standards that guide the way we do our work. And overall, it was to strengthen the understanding and appreciation of how internal audit combines its efforts with other assurance parties to contribute to organizational effectiveness and governance. And then we move on to week 2, where we touched on the theme, enhancing audit quality and evidence, tools and practices for highlighting high-performing audit teams. The name of the game is evidence. You will need evidence to support the entire value chain of internal auditing. So that webinar focused on creating awareness of best practices that strengthen audit quality and the collection of document as evidence, because the standard requires that the evidence we gather should be demonstrable. So somebody who was not involved in the entire work should be able to go through what you have documented and also generate similar results. So it was important that we walked our participants through practical steps they can go ahead to document this evidence. And then we also touched on some standards to guide audit quality and then common challenges faced in practice. We highlighted practical tips, approaches that internal auditors can adopt to improve the reliability, the consistency, and credibility of their work. And then we also highlighted the KPMG tool, which is Risk Hub, that we could also leverage as we seek to pursue the automation of our audit life cycle. Because the age of tick and bash auditing, the age where we document hard copy, is gradually phasing out, and we need to automate as much as possible so that we can be efficient. We moved on to week 3. The goal was to create awareness of best practices that drive efficiency and strengthen collaboration in audit delivery as we improve the understanding of how internal auditors and process owners can work together effectively throughout the audit lifecycle. Internal auditing has never been a solo sport. We can't achieve our purpose, which is to strengthen the organization's ability to create, to protect, and sustain value without working with other people within the organization. And here we got external facilitators to lead the conversation, or some of our clients, let me put it that way. So when I said external facilitators, it was not KPMG panelists. This, we invited our clients to share some perspective with us. And also highlighted common challenges that affect audit timelines and relationship, as well as practical approaches and communication techniques that can enhance the collaboration, reduce delays, as well as ensure smoother and more productive audit process. And talking about collaboration, the standard has a lot of examples to share in terms of how we can collaborate, where you needed to build relationship with your the entire stakeholder, standard 11.1, and then where you need to also collaborate with other assurance parties, standard 9.5. And then today, where we are culminating all together, everything we've done, because once we are done with the work, you must report your observations and your findings. So today, the theme was from findings to impact, using audit results for continuous improvement. And if you are here, I believe you've gained some practical insights on how to draft your recommendation to stand the test of time, and also to support our process owners to implement the recommendations. Yes, somebody may say that internal auditors are not supposed to ensure that we implement the recommendations. Yes, it's not our responsibility. However, depending on the quality of the recommendations, it will be easier for our process owners to implement it accordingly, because implementation of the recommendation is a bridge between the assurance part and then seeing actual results or improvement. And then today as well, we've been able to get some practical insight on how we can support our process owners to drive the implementation of the recommendations. Who owns the fix? We've touched on that. So that brings me to the end of the webinars we had. Aside these webinars, there were some other activities we also embarked upon, and those include some "What do you know?" Did you know series that we posted on our social media handles to share some insight on what you can consider as the work of internal auditing. And then, as part of the activities as well, we had to embark upon some school outreach. And here, we're able to get just one university because some of the universities are on vacation. However, we partnered with IA Ghana to go to University of Professional Studies. And when we went there, the statistics we got were a bit alarming, where when we asked how many of the students have even heard about internal auditing, it was pathetic. And that shows that we have a lot of work to do to share the knowledge about internal auditing for upcoming students to even consider it as a career path. With that said, I've highlighted what we've done within the month, and I believe that come next year, we will have all of you on board. And even as you go, you become our ambassador as internal auditors. And then wherever you find yourself, share knowledge about internal auditing to say that we have never been witch hunters. Yes, it may have happened. However, we are in a new era and we are strategic advisors to support the achievement of the strategic objectives of our individual organizations. Araba, I hand it over back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Liz. So we've come to the point where we have an open forum. So this will be led by our speakers. We have a question in the chat box, but just in case there are any other questions that you also want to ask in relation to internal audit, kindly share that in the chat box. And also, if you have any contributions, we also like to hear from you. So please share that as well. So to our speakers, I don't know if you can put on your videos. So we have a question here. So how can organizations create a culture where audit findings are viewed as opportunities for growth rather than criticism or punishment? I don't know if any of our speakers would like to take that up. That would be great.
Okay. I think I'll take that one. I think that maybe a direct answer to your question will be a change in the culture or a cultural shift. What that means is that you want the entire organization to run in a certain way and have a different way of thinking. And that culture starts at the top, the tone at the top. So it's about really conscientizing leadership to understand that audit findings is not an avenue for blaming or punishment or criticizing, but it is a way for us to have continuous improvement. If that culture shift happens, what it means is that the team's response will be more of less resistance and then ownership. Okay, so if the focus is not in blaming people or punishing people for audit findings, but rather saying that this is a way we can improve upon our process, this is a way we can grow as an organization, you realize that the responses from the team will be more positive and will be more forward-looking. Now, after doing this, you'd also want to think about how you are even writing or documenting your audit findings. So it's about reframing the language of audit, where instead of saying issues or failures or non-compliance, you can substitute it with words such as opportunities for improvement, improvement areas, enhancement points. So it's really about how you write it and the language with which you communicate the audit findings that you have. Now, if you do this, what it means is that people will be less defensive and it will encourage participation and ownership, okay, from management. Now, also, let's try to separate or divide accountability from blame. What it means is that when you have an audit finding, it's more about who owns the solution, who is championing the implementation, as opposed to who did something wrong or who is to blame. Okay, if you're able to tell between accountability from blame, you realize that the energy and the positivity towards audit findings will be better. Now, I think one last thing is about how we even partner with management when it comes to audit findings. If we carry management along, if we carry process owners along, control owners along, they feel like a part of the process. They feel like they own a portion of the process. So maybe if you're talking about risk identification or process walkthroughs, or even how to analyze the root cause of the issues. If you are keeping them in the loop and you are having such discussions with them, what happens that you realize that people will now feel like they own parts of the process and they are not the auditee, or not, they are not the ones being policed, but rather it's a partnership between the internal auditors and management to resolve issues or to even continue to grow the business. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Priscilla. I don't know if other speakers also want to give their opinions on the question. I can see that Omar's, yeah, Omar.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to add to what Priscilla said is, I mean, what I try to do in most cases is, at the point of maybe, because there are some cases where you go to certain companies or maybe you are probably reviewing a particular thing and you have process owners with you or the person in charge of that particular process. I think one thing you can do is maybe at that particular point as to when you are noting that process, you try to educate the person or you try to put the person through. I mean, fine, there is a closeout meeting where you have an extended conversation. But I mean, the reason why most people will always have that idea of, oh, we are maybe police or whatever it is, or whatever it is that they call us in some cases, is because when you look at audit finding, you tend to like have this stern look, or maybe you have this cold behavior, whatever it is. So what I try to do in most cases, I try to communicate it immediately to the process owners, have a conversation with them. This is how you can further improve this particular process, or this is how you can better this process in most cases. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so with this question, also throwing this question to our speakers, looking at how internal audit is evolving over the years, what kind of skills do you think that we also need to develop as internal auditors to be able to keep up with the emerging trends, and looking at how technology is also evolving? What kind of skills do you think that we should be looking at to be able to, let's say, sharpen our crafts as internal auditors? So this is open to our speakers. And also, if you have any responses to these questions that are being asked, you can also drop them in the chat box, and then we can read that aloud and share your thoughts with everybody here today.
Okay, I think I'll take that as well. You know, with the emerging things that are happening right now with AI and with technology, I think that one of the things that we need to keep up with, or try and guard ourselves with, or try and develop ourselves with, is in the space of system audits, IT assurance, and things like that, and even how to use AI, because we've moved mainly from a manual process into automation. So how we're able to even work with large volumes of data becomes very vital. So we need to build our skills in data analytics as a way of reviewing population as opposed to sampling, because when you're able to review an entire population, you're able to come up with more precise audit findings than if you're just picking a sample. So how we can work with large volumes of data, and even how we can use AI. Okay, all of that comes with continuous improvement in terms of how we can equip ourselves in the IT space, how to use system audits and things like that. So that would be my first take on it.
All right, thank you, Priscilla. I don't know if any of our other speakers would like to add to this. Would you like to say something? Liz, would you like to add to what Priscilla has already said?
No, none for now. Thank you.
Okay, all right. And lastly, the big question, would AI take over the job of internal auditors? Or how do you see our job evolving as internal auditors, looking at how AI has evolved?
Okay, Araba, let me make a start. So
All right.
I think it's just one of the things we discussed in our third webinar. And this is an invitation to rewatch the recording. Key insights were shared in terms of the fact that AI will make us more efficient. AI cannot apply the professional judgment we would as human beings. And for that matter, it cannot take our job. The only time it can take our job is when we are not learning how to use it to make us more strategic and then more efficient. So that will be the summary of what I will say as we're discussing our third webinar. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Liz. So any final words from our presenters? All right. So all too soon, we've come to the end of today's event. In fact, we've come to the end of the celebration of our 2026 Internal Audit Month. And we are honored to have the partner of advisory for KPMG Ghana here with us, Kwame Sapombaini. So Kwame is in charge of the advisory function in KPMG Ghana. He has a wealth of experience related to operational and financial audits, forensics audits, risk management, and has gained a lot of experience serving in the public and private entities across the globe. Kwame has assisted our clients to understand the risks that their business face and how these need to be controlled to generate returns in a sustainable manner through the implementation of governance, risk and compliance, and enterprise risk management. He has done this with over 21 years of experience across Ghana, Liberia, and the USA. He's a certified public accountant and a certified global management accountant and a member of the Institute of Internal Audits and a member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. Please help me welcome the head of advisory for KPMG Ghana, Kwame Sapombaini. Kwame, please, if you can hear us, we would love for you to address us before we bring this celebration to an end.
Sure, Arba. Good morning to those of us in Ghana, and good afternoon to our colleagues and all participants from Nigeria. I think it's really worthy, the topic that has been addressed this afternoon and this morning, and purely looking at the impact of findings, and especially how this can be a position to enhance how we do business, how business is run, right? And I think the team and everybody that spoke has really done a good job. And again, the overall essence of building the house, as Elizabeth explained, creating the foundation, have all these webinars, is to really empower and communicate effectively the role of internal audit. And I think nothing really explains it more than how it supports businesses to become sustainable, right? At the end of the day, a good audit is an audit that is done to really identify how to propel the objective of the business. And as internal auditors, I think one of the biggest things that we continue to do is to make sure that our stakeholders have clarity and understand where we are, what we do, and how we partner. So again, it's a clarion call to all of you to continue to do your work professionally. And for those of you who are stakeholders of the internal audit process, I mean, continue to engage us and understand us. A lot has been said, especially around what sort of knowledge that's required today. As an internal auditor, one thing that I always say, you cannot audit what you don't understand. So we must always move ahead of what is being audited or what is being done by businesses, because our objective again is to ensure that we create an enabling environment for businesses to be sustainable. So thank you all. I think it's been a great month. A lot of sessions, as Elizabeth also alluded to. There are a lot of recordings that I think we can share, that we can play back to ensure that all the building blocks are well understood and are taken all the way through the year until we meet again next year in May to continue the discussion. But as we close, we don't close internal audit. We want you to take this up and practice it every day. So thank you all for the time that you've given us. And we look forward to engaging you in various aspects of your businesses. Thank you. So Ara, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Sammy. Okay, so on behalf of KPMG Ghana and Nigeria, I would like to thank you all for your participation throughout the month. You joined us create awareness about the value of internal audit, and through our team, empowering teams, elevating performance, we really hope that we've been able to share some insights to help you improve upon your delivery as internal auditors. And we hope that we've also created some awareness about the profession and how valuable it is. And hopefully for process owners who have joined us throughout the month, we are hoping that you would also be receptive to some of the audit findings and recommendations internal auditors give us to be able to improve upon our process. I'd like to also hand over to Liz if she has anything to share with us, any few words from IIE. She can also have the platform to do so. Liz, I don't know if you can hear me.
Hi, Arba.
Yes, please.
Nothing much aside what Kwame and yourself have alluded to. It is thank you to all of us, and we do appreciate your time to have been with us. And we would hope to see you on another platform. Thank you.
All right, Liz, thank you so much. Just to emphasize on what Liz has already said, all our sessions were recorded, so you can access those videos through our KPMG YouTube channel. And we will also love to have you participate on that as well. But thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Implementation. Take this world-leading oil and gas company, tasked with processing and analyzing a sea of diverse data. KPMG deployed a sophisticated AI analysis ecosystem to close the gap between data retrieval and insight generation, and enable them to work faster, increase capacity, and create more value for their customers. Or this government agency, whose employees were overwhelmed by repetitive tasks. With KPMG, they identified hundreds of opportunities for AI optimization and tailored productivity-enhancing solutions, jump-starting their transformation into an intelligent enterprise. With AI, organizations are realizing their potential in ways they never knew were possible, bringing projects to life in a fraction of the time, with support at every step. What new ideas could you deliver? You can with AI. You can with KPMG. With KPMG, you can accelerate your AI journey. Move at speed, from idea to implementation. Take this world-leading oil and gas company, tasked with processing and analyzing a sea of diverse data. KPMG deployed a sophisticated AI analysis ecosystem to close the gap between data retrieval and insight generation, and enable them to work faster, increase capacity, and create more value for their customers. Or this government agency, whose employees were overwhelmed by repetitive tasks. With KPMG, they identified hundreds of opportunities for AI optimization and tailored productivity-enhancing solutions, jump-starting their transformation into an intelligent enterprise. With AI, organizations are realizing their potential in ways they never knew were possible, bringing projects to life in a fraction of the time, with support at every step. What new ideas could you deliver? You can with AI. You can with KPMG. With KPMG, you can accelerate your AI journey. Move at speed, from idea to implementation. Take this world-leading oil and gas company, tasked with processing and analyzing a sea of diverse data. KPMG deployed a sophisticated AI analysis ecosystem to close the gap between data retrieval and insight generation, and enable them to work faster, increase capacity, and create more value for their customers. Or this government agency, whose employees were overwhelmed by repetitive tasks. With KPMG, they identified hundreds of opportunities for AI optimization and tailored productivity-enhancing solutions, jump-starting their transformation into an intelligent enterprise. With AI, organizations are realizing their potential in ways they never knew were possible, bringing projects to life in a fraction of the time, with support at every step. What new ideas could you deliver? You can with AI. You can with KPMG.